You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Cali Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Cali Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Cali Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
Thank you for listening to Unpause Your Life. You are listening to Dr. Cali Estes, the Addictions Coach and the Addictions Academy. And my guest today is Kati Morton, LMFT, author of Are You Okay? A Guide to Caring for Your Mental Health. It'll be out this December 2018. And she holds a master's in clinical psychology from Pepperdine University, and she is a licensed marriage and family therapist. God bless her heart. In addition, she is a certified dialectical and behavioral therapist and grief counselor and a member of the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. Over the past 7 years, Kati has leveraged social media to share mental health information worldwide through video. Her specialties include working with individuals experiencing eating disorders and self-harming behaviors, although she addresses all things related to mental health. Welcome, Kati.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about this book. This is going to be interesting. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, the book, it's really a labor of love, and I like to think of it as just like the mental health 101. I think a lot of people, even, myself included, even my own mother, like we didn't know what to ask or what to say or what was right or wrong. Are we crazy? A lot of us grow up having depressive episodes or potentially panic attacks, but we don't know, we don't know what we don't know. I always like to say that because often our norm, whatever we're experiencing, we haven't told anybody about it. So we don't know if it warrants help or what that means and how to get the right help. And so the book essentially walks people through that. What's the difference between your mental health and mental illness? How do you find the right therapist or psychologist, and what's the difference? And then I even go through like what types of therapy are available and how to select the one that's right for you. And my goal for the book is really to just give people a place to start. And I find that books can be a lot more intimate than other mediums. People can read it when they have a moment. They can do it in private if they want to, and hopefully just give them some answers to some, long time burning questions.
Okay. Now, do you have personal experiences with mental health, or what made you want to write a book, like a how-to for others?
I've been in the mental health field for almost 10 years now, and I think, and being online for a lot of that time, I just recognize that a lot of people out there are struggling, and I'm no better either. Like I've been in and out of therapy since I was a teenager, mainly because it helped me manage any kind of depressive symptoms I was having or anxiety about life. I think all of us can benefit. And so my hope is that the education that I have, whether it's, my actual degree and working in my practice, but also just the being online and getting to hear from people around the world, I've come to understand that a lot of people just don't know. They don't know how to ask. They're just hurting. And so hopefully this catches people, meets them where they're at and gives them helpful information, to move it forward.
So when people see you online and they see some of your videos, because I know you have a huge social media following, what are they taking away? What are they gaining by, say, watching a YouTube video or reading this book as opposed to maybe going to a therapist? Are they getting something different?
Yeah, this is definitely more generalized information so that you can figure out where you even need to start, like preemptive to maybe even seeing a therapist. How do I know what's a good therapist or a bad therapist? I address that, like some of the red flags, because just like any job, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, there are people that are great at their jobs and people that aren't. And I think a lot of people assume when you go to see someone that because they have this degree, that means that they're great. And that's just not the truth. And so I think my hope for the book overall is just, it could be like a guide as you start on your mental health journey. And you don't have to, like, there's obviously chapters and the book goes in order, but you don't have to go in order. Like if you're already seeing someone, then maybe you read more about how to manage toxic relationships or communication blunders. It'll meet you wherever you're at.
Okay, so let's talk about toxic relationships, because we get a lot of listeners that ask, I'm in a codependent relationship, or I'm dating a narcissist. How do you know if you're in the wrong relationship? How do you know it's toxic? And this doesn't have to be, a love relationship. This could be a best friend relationship.
Oh, yes, definitely. And I find often people are in friendship toxic relationships for much longer than romantic relationships, just because I believe romantic relationships are kind of a little more intense from the beginning. We spend a lot more time with them. So it's easier to see the toxicity up front. And I think some of the red flags are if someone, tries to be what I call enmeshed with you, meaning you can't have really any independence. They want to do everything with you. They want to know where you're at. This can be romantic or friend as well, because they could say like, well, why are you hanging out with them? And I'm not invited. If you don't feel free to be yourself, I think that's one of the first red flags to look out for.
Okay. And how would you recommend somebody to exit that relationship, or what could they do now while they're stuck in that relationship without it getting worse?
I think that it all depends on the relationship. I always encourage communication. I know that that's not always safe when it comes to toxic relationships, but we at least have to try. If it's safe, I always recommend you come to them and say, hey, let's say we're talking about them not being enmeshed and not allowing you to have independence. You can say, hey, when you text me, 20 times in a row, I feel kind of suffocated. And, trying to use those I statements, no blaming language, making sure that you're allowing them to hear you so that you can actually have a conversation. I think opening it up that way and then asking for what you would want in return. So you could say like, hey, this is bothering me. And what I would prefer is that you understand that I'm busy and you can call if it's an emergency, and otherwise you're fine waiting for me to get back to you. Or you're fine with me going out on my own because I'm an individual as well. And based on the way that they respond, we can decide whether we can work on the relationship or the relationship needs to end. Because if they obviously respond with like, how dare you? And I want to get together with you. And you need to respond when I text, and how, you shouldn't be ignoring me and blah, blah, blah. Then we know it's not going to go anywhere. But if they're warm and inviting and like, oh, I'm so sorry. I've just been going through a hard time. I didn't realize I was so smothering. I'll be more conscientious of that. And you just let me know when it's getting to be too much and I'll really work on it. Those are two totally different responses.
Okay. And how would somebody know it goes from being, say a toxic relationship to being a violent relationship? How do they know, now I need to get help. Now I need to get out of this situation. What kind of recommendations do you have for that?
Abusive relationships are the trickiest. And the one thing I mentioned in the book that I just think is important for everybody to hear is, as any person who's in relationships with other people, we have to recognize our own stigma with abuse, because I'm sure if even just talking about this, as I said, abusive relationships, or if I said, oh, someone hit me, people have judgment. Like, what does that say about the person who was abused? Because I've had a lot of friends that'll say, oh, that would never happen to me. I would get out of there so fast. He wouldn't even see it coming, or she wouldn't even see it coming. And I think taking that out of our vernacular is really important, because the people who are in abusive relationships often feel so isolated and are afraid to speak up. And so I just say that because the more opening and warm and welcoming we can be to people who are in abusive relationships, the more quickly I think they'll get out of it. And abusive relationships usually, they grow over time. It's not like we start dating someone and they slap us or they push us downstairs or something terrible. It's usually a slow buildup where it's just a little uncomfortable, where we normally wouldn't think that that's okay, or like, oh, they spoke to us in a way that we don't like, and we might fight back. But they slowly, what abusive people will do is they slowly start to isolate you from other people in your life, which is why that first red flag of like no independence is really important to notice. Because if someone in your life isn't okay with you having other people around, family, friends, they're trying to isolate you so they can manipulate you more easily. Because people outside will see it, people
right.
in our lives would say like, I've noticed, or how come you're flaking on this, or you've been so irritable, or potentially if things have escalated, what's that bruise? Where'd that come from? If they don't isolate us, we might be able to get out more quickly. And then they can start to control things like our money or our time with our children, or, even the food that we eat, they can slowly start to manipulate things until we feel like we have no power left. And that's when we get stuck in that, what we call the abuse cycle, where it's like tension building. We're walking on eggshells. We're afraid that something's going to happen. Then they abuse us. Then they apologize. They'll feel really bad. There's like this honeymoon phase where they'll say like, but I love you and I didn't mean to. I was having a really hard time. And you know me, you know how amazing I am, and blah, blah, blah. And so we start to believe them. And then, the cycle kind of starts again. And so I think that it's really important for everyone to understand that it's not so cut and dried. It's not abuse or not abuse. It grows over time. And the best way to get out is honestly to just start talking about it.
Wow, that's really good advice. Now, what kind of advice do you have for somebody who says, well, my relationship really isn't that bad, but I have other issues. Maybe I'm restricting my food, or I'm binging and purging because I can't control the situation that I'm in, but I can control what food I put in my mouth. So they have a double problem. They have an issue that they're in a toxic relationship and they have an eating disorder, or they just have an eating disorder because they're in a situation that they can't control.
Yeah, I think, eating disorders and self-injury and any kind of addiction, shopping, like excessive shopping, all of these are kind of just like unhealthy coping skills, meaning that something bigger is going on. And so if that is the case, if you find yourself in not only a toxic or just somewhat unhealthy relationship, but then also you're having your own issues and you find it getting worse, I always tell people to work on yourself first, because the truth about it is if we go inside, I call it, like when we're doing our deep work within ourselves, we get into therapy or a group, or we pick up a workbook, or you pick up my book and you figure out how to best navigate the waters. While you're working on yourself and improving, that relationship will fully reveal itself, meaning it'll show you whether or not you need to stay in it. Because often when we're so distracted by what's going on with ourselves, it's hard for us to even manage our relationships. And, most of the time if it's toxic, it just is toxic and, we should get out of it. But sometimes it's because of our dynamic with the person. And if we change the way we interact, it can become healthier. So that's why working on yourself first is the most important thing.
So what do you tell somebody who says, well, I want to work on myself, but I have a lot of guilt and shame over the things I've done? And could be anything. Mm-hmm. Could be eating disorder, could be, sleeping around on their partner, what have you. And they can't seem to get out of their own way. And they say, it's too painful, or it's too hard. How does someone get over that?
One step at a time. You're not expected to go into therapy. I do this personally. I call it verbal diarrhea, where I just have to say everything and then I'll cry or whatever. But not everybody's like that. And it's okay for you to go into therapy and to say, I've just been feeling really maxed out lately and I'm cheerful, or, I find myself extremely irritable, whatever your symptoms are. It's okay to start there. And as you get more comfortable sharing and you decide you like your therapist and you feel like it is helping and working, then you can share your deepest, darkest secrets, or the things that you really feel shame or guilt about, because everybody feels shame and guilt about everything. I think that that's just kind of something that the more we are courageous and lean into that and share about it, the less power it'll have over us. But we have to get to that point first.
So you do some hard therapy, because I do therapy, but I do addiction, which I think is a lot easier than grief and loss and trauma. And you do some of the hard stuff. When it comes to like grief and loss and trauma and those types of things, how do you do self-care? How do you protect yourself? Because you're dealing with people that are in pain all the time. How do you decompress from that? Because I would think some of our listeners would say, well, you're in the helping profession, you're always helping, you're always doing all these things, and you're dealing with people with mental health, which can be draining. So how do you protect yourself, and what do you do for self-care?
Yeah, and don't discredit the work you do. Addiction's really hard work too, I think, personally. As someone who doesn't, that's not my specialty, but that's amazing work that you do. It's all about boundaries. The interesting thing that I've learned about myself being online as well as just a clinician in general is, what am I willing to give up for my patients? And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but I mean, like, how often can I be accessible? I'm very clear with my patients, don't text or call me unless A, it's an emergency, or B, it's just a scheduling thing. And know that it can take me 24 hours to get back to you. So if it's really an emergency, you have to call 911. You know, you have to set up healthy parameters for you and for your patients. And so, because if I'm letting them bother me all the time, then they're not given the opportunity to try out the new tools and see if they're really helping them, right? Like we're not going to know if therapy is actually beneficial. And also, then I'm not even getting a break. And so it is a work in progress, and I'm still trying to get better at it, but it's definitely about the boundaries around my time, and then making sure that I do take time off, like completely disconnected, spending time with family or friends, and I don't get on my phone at all. And so I think that some of that is like learning and taking, even if it's just mini breaks. I think people often feel like in order for self-care to work, you have to be like a whole day or hours of time. And I'm like, no, let's start with like 20 minutes. See if you can do something loving for yourself in that 20 minutes. Is that going for a walk? Is that calling a close friend? Is that just not looking at your phone? What is it? Brené Brown, who I love, if you don't know who she is, she does research. I think she's a LCSW in the mental health field, but she writes a ton of books. She's amazing. And she talks about like breath in for breath out, and how if we're giving, right, we're in like a caring field. It could be anything from a mom, a nurse, a teacher, anybody. If we're giving all this breath out, either creatively or energetically, we have to breathe in. And so every time you're putting a breath out, like if I've been working all day and I'm creating content, I'm interacting with people and offering advice, then when I'm done, I'm going to need to breathe in. So what is that fills me back up? Is that yoga? Is that, talking to someone? So just keeping that in mind, like naturally our body balances breath out and breath in, and we're going to have to do that self-care wise as well. And so that's just something that I try to keep in mind.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But it's hard.
It is hard. It's very difficult. I've got a client that quotes Brené Brown. Like every time we get on the phone, he's like, and I read this section, and then he reads it to me, and I'm like, yes, but you haven't done the action steps. You have read this section and done none of the work.
Yeah.
Which is
hard work.
It is hard work. So what advice would you have for our listeners that might be experiencing any of these mental health issues? How can they find you? How can they find your book? Things like that.
Yeah, they can find me online, just Kati Morton, KATIMORTON. That's all of my socials, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. I have over 1,000 videos on YouTube addressing any topic. So I'm often telling my newer viewers, I'm like, just search Kati Morton and insert some keywords like trauma or addiction, and you'll see all of the videos that I've done come up on that particular subject. And then my book is available on Amazon. You can find it on Barnes & Noble, or a lot of your local bookstores, and even at the library.
Awesome. Well, that's wonderful. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. We'll put all the links up for you. So when you get it up on Amazon, if you just shoot us that link, we'll have it up for you. And then they can click on anything, and they can also reach you if they're looking for some help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. And you've been listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Cali Estes. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Head on over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or review of what you think. Or contact us at 1-800-706-0318. If you want to be on our show, feel free to email or call. And if you have a topic, feel free to email or call as well.
Thanks for listening to Unpause Your Life. For show notes and more, head on over to unpauseyourlife.com.
Big shout out to recoveryinnovators.com for help producing this show. Thank you guys.
I took a walk down the long road where they said that I shouldn't go. On my way found a reason to wake up another day, but they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I made down the dark road where they said that